This is a story of how two friends of two distant worlds reunited following the time where power had control over everything, even education. And a girl had opened the eyes of a young fella that made him realize how it was just the beginning. If he could go back and change the past, be a little braver than he had, and bet against the odds, would he had still be lost? OMG. How long has it been? It has been like a million years since the last time we met.
Yup. I think it was around 15 years ago when I was in Malaysia for a while. My dad had some business to do here, so he decided to bring the whole family together since it was the summer holiday then. Sigh, but that was when COVID-19 was still ravaging the earth though.
I'll be damned. I had completely forgotten about that sick disease. It was pretty much like hell back then, well at least for me and my family. My parents were not that loaded, so we had to live on the paycheck of my mother as she was the only one who had a job.
I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't know. You seemed fine when we met at the park.
Nah, no worries. All is good. I didn't want to imply anything. It was the first time we met that day at the park. Ha ha ha.
Ah, okay then. So, talking about COVID, right? How was your experience during that time? How did you manage to handle it in terms of your education and online learning as we were around? Wait, I was 16, so you were 15, right? So, yeah, how?
I guess I would say we all had a hard time coping with the whole online learning situation as it wasn't consistent, and we also didn't have enough resources. The whole situation was just tough on everyone. Despite that, of course there were pros and cons during my experience with online learning just like you did, I'm sure. The positive ones would be that we were able to do asynchronous learning, meaning that we could have studied at any given time of the day. This made my learning process easy for myself as most of the time I learned best in the wee hours of the morning compared to learning during normal schooling timing. Other than that, due to its online nature, lots of materials are already available online, so that means if I don't understand what my teachers were explaining, I could just search up for more details to allow me to have a more comprehensive understanding of the topic/subject.
Ah, I see. Good for you then.
I'm not finished, Aida of Adelaide. Then, if we're speaking of the negative experiences that I faced during the online learning period, it would be very easy for one to lose track of their progress, especially if their self-discipline is low. Personally for me, there were times where I would be distracted from classes and then left wondering what exactly did I learn? Or even what are my assignments again? This was because not only was I not self-disciplined but also I was distracted with my surroundings, social media and other distractors that were available online. Okay, now I'm finished.
I totally agree and understand you. I went through the same thing. There is just so many things available on the internet, whether it was good or bad, and it's quite easy to go off track than what you had intended to do. I used to get so distracted to the point I no longer know what's going on in classes, which then just leads me to feeling demotivated. Gosh, it was really harsh back then, wasn't it? Anyway, when I had online classes, we used apps such as Zoom and Google Meet to have our lectures and discussions. And if you're lucky, you might have someone that's attractive in your class too. Asterisk wink wink asterisk.
Ha ha ha. Well yeah, those online learning days back then were harsh. Imagine the 180-degree total change, from never having online classes, and suddenly online classes is all you know. It definitely takes some time for people to get accustomed to it. Oh, you used those apps too for lectures and discussions? We used those, but most of the time we used Google Meet and Microsoft Teams depending on what our teachers preferred. In the early days of online learning, we did use Zoom for quite a bit. I find those platforms to be quite decent and user-friendly for everyone. We used different apps too while online classes for different purposes. We were also exposed to Kahoot, Ampersand, other fun apps and sites that were made to promote game-based learning, and we sure did enjoy it. Kahoot was fun as it was a multiple-choice quiz that had a time limit and had a user-friendly and bright-colored interface, which captured everyone's attention. The best part of it is that the faster you answer it, and if your answer is correct, you garner a lot of points, and in the end you'll get to see if you are the winner or so. It kind of gets you excited and your adrenaline kind of rushing. I loved Kahoot.
Ah, we used Kahoot too, but not as much as you do, as we prefer to use Quizlet, which works in a similar way to Kahoot. Game-based learning was something that I always looked forward to because it was really fun and interactive. I find that I learned and focused best when teachers used those apps during classes. But then sometimes I would run into issues such as my internet connectivity would be unstable, which is a hassle as it disrupts me from receiving what I was supposed to be learning because I was unable to listen to everything the teacher was teaching on those days.
Yep, I totally understand you. I faced the same issues too, but it gets worse for those who live in the rural areas, as not only the internet connection is unstable for them, sometimes even both internet and network connections are really poor to the point they couldn't access anything at all, which then causes them to not receive the education that they deserve. Other than that, those in rural areas are commonly people who could only afford basic necessities, thus gadgets and such are viewed as a luxury to them. Some may have gadgets to help with their online learning process, but it may not be compatible enough to cover for all sorts of apps and knowledge that are shared by the teachers, as we both know that not only gadgets can be expensive to some people, but also buying and using up a lot of internet data can also be pricey for them, especially if they have to share the same gadget with their siblings. I can't help but feel bad for them.
Wait, Megat of Malaysia, before we continue our also intellectual conversation, should we take this to the park, the place where we first met? Our triple shot, almond milk caramel macchiatos with whipped cream and extra caramel drizzle are finished anyway.
Sure, why not? Ah, it's so good to be back here. It feels like forever.
What do you mean? You live not more than 4 blocks from here, right?
Yeah, but ever since I started working, I haven't had the time to just take a breather or two and just stroll around in the park.
I see. Well, it's a good thing I paid a visit to Malaysia, huh? Well, back to our topic from before.
Oh? I thought we already got past that. Ha ha ha.
What were you talking about again, eh? I forgot.
I was talking about families in rural areas having to share only one gadget.
Ah yeah, that is sad, seeing how they would have to share just one gadget among all siblings just so they can all receive the education that they deserve. I never actually knew that some rural areas in your country were unable to get any sort of internet connection and all that. That must have been super rough on those who lived there then.
Yeah.
There should have been some serious changes that need to be made so that everyone received what they deserved. Well, if you could make some suggestions on how the appropriate bodies can improve your country's education, what would you suggest?
Well, I would suggest the appropriate bodies and the Ministry of Education to increase their budget to help out those in need, especially those who couldn't afford to have sufficient internet and appropriate gadgets to help out with their process of receiving the education that they deserve. Once they did hand out phones to students as an aid. However, it was a poor quality phone and definitely did not work out well for the students. The camera was so blurry that you could barely see anything, and also there was once where one of the receiver's phones blew up because it got too hot from processing and whatnot.
Gasp.
There were more cases with it though. I do hope that the next time around, when online learning is made to run fully, the appropriate bodies will take things more seriously and help accordingly.
What? That just sounds terrible. It was supposed to help those in need to receive proper education, but instead it just came in with more issues. That is certainly something that shouldn't have ever happened.
Believe it or not, that was what actually happened. Well, they also did introduce a channel on television in hopes to allow all students to receive education, especially those without appropriate gadgets that can be connected through Wi-Fi.
Oh.
It was called Aideed. This channel is used where they would call upon teachers to record and teach students all the necessary education syllabus. It is a very useful channel, however it is fully catered to just the syllabus. I would suggest that Aideed is not just catered to the delivery of school syllabus, but also include the tips and tricks on how to study more efficiently and what can be done to ensure students fully understand what they are learning. I would also suggest they have some motivational breaks and talks that cover exactly what students need. I strongly believe that Aideed is a very useful tool for students, be it those who are facing difficulties and even those who are able to have online learning just fine.
Very wise. am very wise. I suppose we could only talk about it, huh?
Yeah, it's been 15 years since I left school. But my nephews and nieces seem to be experiencing kind of the same situation as I did. Sigh, what could ever save this country? Heck, even you haven't changed. Huh. Ha 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 ha.
Megat.
Yeah.
It's already night.
Gosh, I didn't realize.
Before we part ways again, I just want you to know, I was living in my own world. I didn't understand that anything can happen when you take a chance.
I never believed in what I couldn't see. I never opened my heart to all the possibilities. I know that something has changed. Never felt this way, and right here tonight.
This could be the start of something new.